The Tick Research Lab of Pennsylvania with us, and we're super excited to hear what you guys have to say. I'll let you introduce yourself and take it away.
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. My name is Marissa, and I am one of the public health assistants here at the Tick Research Lab of Pennsylvania at East Stroudsburg University. And I'm here to talk to you about ticks today. So just a little overview of what we're going to talk about. We'll start with an introduction to tick-borne diseases. We'll talk about the tick species that are prevalent here in Pennsylvania, tick safety and prevention, so just some tips related to that. We will talk about our free tick testing process, as well as the research that we have done and we are currently doing here in the lab. So just to start, we'll talk about some tick-borne diseases in the United States as a whole. So the data here in this chart is from the CDC. These are the numbers of these diseases that are reported to the CDC from 2019 to 2022, as well as the total numbers for each disease between those years. So as we all know, the most prevalent, the most well-known tick-borne disease in the United States is Lyme disease. So in 2022, there were 62,551 cases of Lyme reported to the CDC. This is almost definitely an underestimate. We have a lot of issues with underreporting, and that goes for all of these tick-borne diseases as well. We have some other bacterial infections like anaplasmosis, ehrlichiosis, spotted fever rickettsiosis, which includes Rocky Mountain spotted fever you may have heard of, as well as tularemia. So those are all bacterial infections. We also have the babesiosis, which is a parasitic infection, as well as Powassan virus. And you can see that most of these have increased between 2019 and 2022, and they are continuing to increase. We just don't, unfortunately, have more recent data reported yet. But all of these are very real and very emerging public health issues. So then this map here shows the geographic distribution of the diseases that we just talked about. So Lyme disease, you can see, is the most prevalent across the Northeast, the upper Midwest, as well as a little bit in Northern California, Florida, similar with anaplasmosis and babesiosis. So these are all caused by or carried by the black-legged deer tick. So that has a lot to do with the distribution of these diseases. Whereas Rocky Mountain spotted fever and ehrlichiosis, those are carried by dog ticks or Lone Star ticks, so different species that are more prevalent in the southern states. So for Pennsylvania, you can see that we are covered in purple and green. So Lyme disease followed by anaplasmosis are the most common diseases in Pennsylvania. We do also have quite a few cases of babesiosis, but this is not a mandated reporting is not existent in Pennsylvania for babesiosis, which is why you can see a lot of the cases of that in New Jersey, New York, lower New England, but we do not report it in Pennsylvania. So just a little bit of background about ticks in general. Ticks are ectoparasites, which means that they feed externally on their hosts. And their hosts can be mammals, birds, and reptiles, so a wide variety of animals, including humans. They're part of the arachnid family along with spiders. They're found globally in temperate areas. So in addition to the United States, there are a lot of ticks across Europe, as well as China. The black-legged deer tick has been found in every US state except for Hawaii. A tick has 4 life stages. So it starts as an egg, the egg hatches into a larvae, which grows into a nymph, and then into an adult, which is when it becomes sexually mature and either male or female in the adult stage. And ticks are capable of transmitting many diseases. So the diseases are maintained in wildlife populations, such as mice and other rodents. And then the diseases are transferred to ticks from the small mammals when they feed on them. So the blood enters the body of the tick, and then the tick becomes infected. And then the tick goes on to bite another host and spreads the disease to the second host. So to start with the black-legged deer tick, and this is the one that usually we're most familiar with, especially here in Pennsylvania. It's by far the most common species of tick here as well, but they are found all across the eastern United States, east of the Rocky Mountains. But as I said before, they have been found here and there in all states except for Hawaii. So to the left, you can see what they look like in different life stages. So the adult female is the most common one that you will see, especially if they are attached to you. So the adult female is about the size of a sesame seed. They're reddish brown in color with a very dark black oval shield at the top of the body and black legs as well. The adult males are just a little bit smaller and they're entirely black because the shield covers the entire body. Nymphs are very small, about the size of a poppy seed. So to the naked eye, um, especially to someone like me with not perfect eyesight, they kind of just look like a black dot. But once they become engorged, sometimes you can see a little bit of the white body as well. And then the larvae are very, very tiny. So black-legged deer ticks can transmit many diseases, including Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, babesiosis, Powassan virus, and something caused by a similar bacteria to the one that causes Lyme disease called tick-borne relapsing fever-like. Next, we have the American dog tick. This is the second most common species in Pennsylvania. These are quite a bit bigger, so they're definitely easier to see with the naked eye. The adult female is kind of an oval shape. The body is a bit of a darker reddish brown, and then the shield is also brown with some white markings on it. And then the legs are going to be a brown color as well. The adult males, again, are going to be a little bit smaller, and they have these kind of zigzag lightning bolt markings on the back. And then once again, the nymphs are going to be a bit smaller than that, and then the larvae are even smaller. So in the larva and nymph stages, it can be very difficult to tell these species apart without a microscope or some sort of magnification. The dog tick, again, is going to be found all across the eastern US as well as on the Pacific coast, and they can transmit ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, and tularemia. The Lone Star tick, this one is definitely growing in numbers, especially here in Pennsylvania. We're seeing a lot of them this year. They're found all across the eastern US as well, just not quite as far north, at least not yet. So in the upper Midwest and then very far north, New England, you won't see the Lone Star tick quite yet. They're a little bit smaller than the dog tick, a little bit more of a circle shape. The female has a very distinctive white dot in the middle of its back, and it's going to be a bit of a reddish brown again on the rest of its body. The adult male is a little bit smaller. The color is a little bit lighter than the male dog tick, and it does not have the zigzag white markings that the male dog tick has. And then the nymph tick, again, is going to be very small, white in color, and to the naked eye, it will be very difficult to tell it apart from the other species. These can transmit, similar to the dog tick, ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, southern tick-associated rash illness or stari, and tularemia. And I know at least one person is wondering about alpha-gal, and I promise we will talk about that in a few slides. So just a little bit more about the tick sizes to scale. So you can see the ruler there. That is representing 1 inch. So all of the ticks next to it, you can really see how tiny they are compared to 1 inch on a ruler, especially in the larva and nymph stages. They can be very, very hard to see. And I mentioned it earlier, but a nymph black-legged deer tick is about the size of a poppy seed, and the adult female, at least when it's unengorged, will be the size of a sesame seed. So this is just a little bit more about how to identify the different species of ticks, some of the features that we use to identify them. So these are the scutum and festoons. So festoons are these kind of blocky ridges on the back of the dog tick and the Lone Star tick. They are not present on the black-legged deer tick. And then the scutum or the shield is very distinctive in each species. So the black-legged deer tick has a very dark, almost black oval shield. The dog tick has those white markings on it. And then the Lone Star tick has the distinctive white dot. And these are all adult females on this slide as well. And then a little bit more about the engorgement of ticks. So as ticks are attached to you or to another host, they're feeding on your blood. Their body is filling up with your blood, so they grow in size. And you can see all the way on the left is an unfed adult female deer tick. So that's the one that we have looked at in the slides previous. But the longer it is attached to you, the larger the body becomes. So after 36 hours, it will look a little bit bigger, and then the body will grow and grow until it becomes fully engorged at about 7 days there. And you can see they really blow up and they look almost like a small grape when they're fully engorged. And then at the bottom, we have unengorged versus fully engorged dog tick, lone star tick, and then another deer tick as well. Um, and the more they become engorged, the smaller the shield becomes in relation to the rest of the body because the rest of the body is so big and blown up. So they can be pretty difficult to tell apart once they become fully engorged like that. So the longer the tick is attached to you and the longer it's feeding on your blood, the greater the risk of acquiring a tick-borne disease. Each disease does have a little bit of a different average transmission time because they can all be stored in different parts of the tick's body. So Powassan virus, for example, is found in the saliva of the tick. So it's transmitted very quickly, within about 15 minutes on average. Anaplasmosis, on the other hand, typically takes about 6 to 10 hours. Within 18 to 24 hours, your risk of transmission for many diseases goes up a lot, including ehrlichiosis, Lyme disease, relapsing fever-like, and Rocky Mountain spotted fever. So all of those are going to be held in the mid-gut of the tick, which is why they take a bit longer than something like Powassan virus. And then babesiosis, it takes a bit longer than that. And tularemia really takes a long time, within 3 to 5 days. But you can see that the longer it is attached, the greater your risk for each disease, as well as for acquiring multiple diseases. So it's really crucial to find the tick quickly and not leave it attached to you for so long. And then Powassan virus is an emerging threat. Between 2019 and 2022, there were 135 cases nationwide, but there was a 0.11% increase between 2024 and 2025, so it's continuing to increase. And it is a nationally notifiable disease, and reporting is mandatory in the state of Pennsylvania. This is so important because cases can be potentially fatal if not diagnosed and properly treated in time. So the symptoms for Powassan virus can range very widely. Most cases will just be some more mild flu-like symptoms, but they can range all the way up to encephalitis and seizures and very serious neurological disease. And among those serious cases, the mortality rate is about 10%. So it's very crucial to get it diagnosed and treated very quickly. And then the map on the left shows the regions of Pennsylvania which have the most cases of Powassan virus. And I think that you mentioned that you are in Southwest Pennsylvania. So as you can see, Southwest PA has the most cases of Powassan virus between 2024 and 2025. And then alpha-gal syndrome. I know this is a hot topic right now. We're hearing a lot about it. And there's a lot of misinformation and misunderstanding about it too. So we definitely want to make sure we talk about this. Alpha-gal syndrome, first of all, is an allergy. It is not a disease. It's not caused by a pathogen such as a bacteria or a parasite or a virus. It's a type of allergy to red meat and other products made from mammals, especially cows and pigs. Again, it's not an infection. It is often caused by a lone star tick bite. So in the saliva of the lone star tick and potentially some other tick species, there is a sugar molecule called alpha-galactose or alpha-gal. So when the tick bites you, this molecule enters your body. In some people, this will trigger an immune response that will cause mild to severe allergic reactions. Unfortunately, there's a very similar sugar molecule found in the products from cows and pigs, which is why you will then be allergic to the red meat. The only way to know if you have alpha-gal syndrome, unfortunately, is to be diagnosed by an allergist. So even our tick testing, or to my knowledge, any other tick testing, you will, we can't test the tick. The only way is to test the person, and you'll have to go to an allergist for that. And these reactions can range very widely from just a hives or an itchy rash, nausea and vomiting, all the way up to anaphylaxis. So there is some evidence that black-legged ticks can cause this as well, because there were 2 cases of alpha-gal syndrome diagnosed in Maine where the Lone Star tick is not known to live. So they think that maybe those cases were caused by the black-legged deer tick. And it's not as rare as we once thought. So in 2021, there were 32 cases of alpha-gal syndrome diagnosed. In 2024, there were over 500. So it's increasing, one, because the Lone Star tick is also increasing in number, and we are, finding out more about it. So it's being diagnosed more as well. So where are ticks found? Ticks like shady and moist places, as well as places where their hosts live. So things like under wood piles, in thick brush, under leaf litter, around stone walls. These all provide places for both the ticks to hide, as well as mice and small rodents that the ticks like to feed off of. Forest edges and tall grass as well. So this is where you'll find a lot of, again, small mammals as well as deer. So there's animals for the ticks to feed off of. So that's where you'll find more ticks as well. So the interaction between ticks and their pathogens, a tick lives for approximately 2 years. That's the entire span of its life. But they can survive hundreds of days without feeding. So they feed during the larvae, nymph, and adult female life stages. They can transmit diseases between life stages, and nymphs are most likely to transmit disease. So once the egg hatches into a larva, the larva will take its first blood meal. It will often become infected by, the mouse or the small rodent, whatever animal it's feeding on. And then once the tick becomes infected, it carries that infection or multiple infections throughout the rest of its life. So if the larva becomes infected, then the nymph is still infected. The nymph will then go on to take a second blood meal, which can be from a human or from a deer. And if it happens to be a human, then it will transmit its disease to the human. And then it works the same way in an adult tick as well. I mentioned nymphs are the most likely to transmit diseases. They are not the most likely to carry diseases. So as the tick goes throughout its lifespan, the chance of it carrying a pathogen is higher. So adults are the most likely to be infected. However, nymphs are smaller, they're very hard to see, so they're often attached for longer, which, as I mentioned before, the longer the tick is attached, the greater the risk for transmission. So here are some statistics for the diseases in Pennsylvania specifically. So Pennsylvania has the most cases of Lyme disease out of any state in the US, and we actually account for about 30% of all the cases from all states combined. In 2025, 18,538 laboratory cases of Lyme disease were identified. Again, this is most definitely an underestimate because these are laboratory confirmed cases. So this is not including any case that was clinically diagnosed and treated without laboratory confirmation. And it's also not including any cases that went undiagnosed. The top Pennsylvania counties by Lyme disease cases are Forest, Warren, and Cameron in the northwest part of the state. Lyme disease cases peak between June and August, but they are found throughout the entire year. This is because nymph ticks will typically emerge in the spring. As I mentioned, nymphs are the most likely to transmit the disease, and then it will typically take about a month or two for people to become diagnosed. So there's a little bit of a delay between when they contract the disease and when it's diagnosed and reported. And then Lyme disease cases by year as well. So there was definitely a dip between 2020 and 2021. We all know the pandemic occurred, so there was underreporting as well as people just not going outside as much. But between 2023 and 2025, there was a very, very high number of Lyme disease cases reported compared to previous years. Anaplasmosis is the second most common tick-borne disease in Pennsylvania. In 2024, there were 1,071 cases. Again, anaplasmosis kind of peaks in May and June from the nymph ticks that emerged in the spring. But we do find it as well in the summer, throughout the fall, with just very few cases in the winter. And then the map again shows the number of cases by county. So the darker shaded counties are where there are more cases found. Ehrlichiosis in 2024, there were 27 cases measured between May and July. There's a gap in reporting in 2020, but 2022 and 2023, there was a very big increase. 2024, not sure what happened. That might have been some incomplete data, or the cases might have been reduced. But again, this is still another emerging and growing threat. Babesiosis, as I mentioned before, is a parasitic infection, so it's a little bit different than the other ones we just talked about. There were 199 cases in Pennsylvania in 2024, but this is not a disease with mandated reporting, so there were likely a lot more cases that went unreported. And they were measured between April and December. They peaked between June and July. Cases, as I said, are not mentioned to be reported, mandated to be reported in Pennsylvania, so the actual number of cases is likely very much higher. The symptoms, are similar to Lyme disease and anaplasmosis, but because it's a parasitic infection and not a bacterial infection, doxycycline, which is the antibiotic that's typically given for the bacterial infections, is not a suitable treatment option. So correct diagnosis is very important here. And the number of cases has increased steadily, and in 2023 and 2024, they were very high in Pennsylvania. So this is our data. This is the total percentage of adult and nymph black-legged deer ticks that tested positive for each disease in Pennsylvania, specifically between 2024 and 2025. So of all the adult deer ticks that we tested in these 2 years, 34.8% of them tested positive for Lyme disease. So a very high proportion of deer ticks are carrying Lyme disease. Among the nymph ticks, it's 19.8%, so that's still very high. Anaplasmosis is the second most common, 5.6% for adults and 3.7% for nymphs. Babesiosis is 3.2% for adults and 2.4% for nymphs. And then we have tick-borne relapsing fever is not as common, and Powassan virus as well, but still things that we are keeping an eye on. So why the increase in tick populations? I know this is another hot topic, and it's being heavily debated on social media right now. I know that there are a lot of questions about this. So the first thing is temperature changes. So temperatures are getting warmer. Ticks are surviving longer over the winters. It takes very, very cold temperatures for ticks to die because of the cold. So it's warm enough for them to survive. It is also getting warmer earlier in the spring, so that means that they have a longer season where they can find their hosts, to feed on their hosts, and lay eggs as well. Forest fragmentation is another big factor. So we are breaking up the forest into smaller sections, which decreases biodiversity. So in particular, it gets rid of the larger predators for the small mammals as well as the deer, which allows the populations of the small mammals and the deer to grow. And that just means more ticks because they have more animals to feed off of. There are also more forest edges, which you can see in the graphic on the bottom, which, we talked about before. The forest edge means more ticks as well. And then the Lyme disease spirochetes, which is the bacteria, are evolving. So there are many different strains of this bacteria, and there are more and more evolving all the time, which makes it harder to treat as well. And this also affects the development of a vaccine which is why it makes it so difficult. It's kind of like the flu. There are so many different strains of the flu all the time. So if you want to get a flu vaccine, you have to get a new one every year. It's kind of the same idea with Lyme disease. So personal tick prevention. Before and while outdoors, ideally you want to wear light colors so it's easier to spot the ticks if they are crawling on you. Wear a hat when you can, and long hair should be worn in a ponytail or up in a bun. Ideally, you can tuck it into the hat as well, so the ticks don't have hair to grab onto. If possible, wear a long sleeve shirt and pants. You can even tuck your pants into your socks and tuck your shirt into your pants. Maybe not the most fashionable, but it definitely helps prevent ticks. And then pack a tick spray as well. You can treat your clothing, boots, and socks with permethrin or DEET. These are the active ingredients that are most recommended in insect repellent, especially for ticks. And then after being outdoors, you should remove your clothes that you're wearing outside as soon as possible. You can place them in the dryer on high for 10 minutes. This helps to kill the ticks. Take a shower immediately or as soon as possible, ideally within 2 hours, and conduct a tick check of yourself, head to toe. You should check yourself, your children, other loved ones, and pets. Have someone else check your back for you if you can, as well as the back of your head, places that are hard to see. And remove ticks correctly, and we will talk about tick removal as well. And then these are the 5 most common areas that ticks will attach. So about 90% will attach on the hairline or behind the ears, as well as the chest, the armpits, the back, which is hard to see, unfortunately, the legs, and then the groin area as well. So to properly remove a tick, first of all, we'll talk about what not to do. So a lot of people think that you should either burn a match and take the match to the tick, use essential oils, alcohol or soap or petroleum jelly to have the tick retreat on its own. But these are actually all things that we don't want to do because while it may cause the tick to emerge on its own, it will irritate the tick. It will make it angry, and then it increases the chance that the tick will regurgitate its gut contents into your blood, and then that increases your risk for disease transmission. So what to do, how to properly remove a tick, you should use thin pointed tweezers, as thin as possible, and grab the tick as close to the base of the mouth as possible and pull straight up and out. And you don't want to do anything else. Don't use any liquids or anything like that. This is the safest way to remove them. Prevention in your yard and your home. So keep lawn and grass mowed short. And then we really want to just make the yard as inhospitable to ticks and their host as possible. So keep the yard free of leaf litter and debris. Keep wood piles away from any areas that you're going to be hanging out outside or your children or your pets will be playing. Increase sunlight where possible, and keep play areas 9 feet or more from the farthest edge. You can also use treatments such as tick tubes for small mammals. So tick tubes are little tubes that are filled with cotton balls treated with permethrin. And then what happens is the mice or the small rodents will grab the cotton balls, they'll bring them back to their nest, and then it treats the mice with the permethrin, which will kill the ticks. You can also use yard sprays and fencing. These will discourage wildlife from your yard as well. And then for our pets, you can treat dog bedding, again, with permethrin. Just make sure you use gloves when you're using it and let it dry before touching or before allowing your animal to touch it. Perform tick checks regularly, just like you would for yourself. Also perform them on your pets after being outdoors, especially checking in the ears and under the armpits. Treat pets with anti-tick medication or use an anti-tick collar where possible. And then speak to your veterinarian, about the tick medication or the Lyme disease vaccine for dogs as well. So what we are doing here in the lab is a form of passive surveillance here in Pennsylvania. So we are the first statewide initiative to collect important information on tick-borne diseases in Pennsylvania, as well as identify hotspots for these diseases. We are also looking at the distribution of ticks in general, as well as specific species, and the demographics on who is being bitten by the ticks and exposed to the diseases. Our goal is to provide early detection of exposure. So we're identifying exposure by identifying, who is being bitten, as well as what diseases the ticks are carrying. And then we're identifying risk by measuring the engorgement of the tick. So we can tell you how long the tick was attached to you. All right, so how can I send in the tick? After removing the tick, I enclose it in a clean Ziploc bag with nothing else inside except for the tick. So no tape, no paper towels or cotton balls. Go to our website, which is ticklab.org. Right from the homepage, there will be a big button that says Test My Tick. Select that and input all of the prompted information. So we'll just ask you a little bit of information about yourself, as well as where you picked up the tick and what you were doing when you found it. It will give you an order voucher form with an order number. Just print that out and close it inside the envelope with the tick, and then you can mail it to us, or if you are local, which probably not a lot of you are, but if you happen to be, you can drop it off at our office or in our Dropbox after hours. So what's included in the testing? Our free basic panel is free for all Pennsylvania residents. So the testing panel will vary a little bit based on the species of the tick. For black-legged deer ticks, it will include Lyme disease, anaplasmosis, tick-producing fever like babesiosis, and Powassan virus. And then for non-deer ticks, it will include Lyme disease, ehrlichiosis, Rocky Mountain spotted fever, tularemia, and Powassan virus. And then we do also have advanced and comprehensive testing panels available as well. Okay. So a little bit about our results. So in 2025, we tested 30,322 ticks. Among those, 11,880 were adult black-legged ticks, so quite a big proportion. The state co-infection rate was 6.8%. So 6.8% of all of the ticks in the state were carrying multiple diseases. The highest region for co-infection was the North Central, which was 9.6%. The lowest region was the Southeast at 4.5%. And then we also tested 6,782 nymph black-legged ticks with a co-infection rate of 3.1%. The highest region for co-infection was the Southeast with 4.5%, and the lowest was the Southwest with 1.6%. So here are the hosts by age group. So among all of the ticks that we were sent in, the most common age group for being bitten by the tick was young children up to 5 years old. So we had 4,963 ticks from that age group, followed by the 6 to 11 years old age group, which was 4,488 ticks. And then the third highest was the 35 to 44-year-old age group. And then just to conclude, here's our website, which is ticklab.org. That is where you can go to register your tick if you would like to send one in to us. You can also see a lot of information about our statistics, and that can be broken down by state as well as by disease. And we also have a frequently asked questions section on there with some additional information. And then you can contact us through the website as well. And you can also follow us. We are on Facebook and Instagram at PA Tick Lab. And then thank you for having me, and I'm open to questions as well.
Awesome. That was super interesting. I learned quite a lot listening to you talk just here. But I have some questions, and then we also sourced some questions from our social media from folks in our area had lots of questions about ticks. So it's a hot topic right now. Lots of people are noticing what your data supports is that there are more and more. It feels like every year.
Yes, absolutely.
So I feel like for the past 3 years, everyone has been talking about how bad ticks are this year. You know,
Yes.
uh, And it
Yes.
just keeps getting, like I said, worse and worse. So, I did not know that Pennsylvania, well, like the incidences were so high in Pennsylvania that we're the highest in the whole country. Why is that? Is that just because we are tracking it better, or is there actually more reason to be concerned living here?
I think it's a combination of things. First of all, it's just the sheer number of ticks that live in the state. We have a lot of forests. We are also a pretty big state, especially compared to, some other states in the Northeast. We also have more people, so that just means, higher incidence just because the population is bigger. We have a lot of deer as well. Um, so deer populations hit kind of a low point in the early 20th century, I want to say. And then they've grown a lot. But in some states, they haven't recovered quite as much as they have in Pennsylvania. So I think just, a combination of all those things, um, yeah, just unfortunately leads to a higher incidence of disease.
Gotcha, gotcha. Um, let's see. There are so many questions.
Yeah, yeah,
I
okay.
guess we can start off. You kind of touched on, the best, like the recommendations for tick repellent.
Mhm.
But people were very interested to know, are there any sort of home remedies that work as tick repellent? Anything that you can like make, I guess, like in your own kitchen, to repel ticks or protect your property, from ticks? Or is it,
Yeah,
just the two that you recommended that work?
it's understandable. I know, sometimes people want to use more natural solutions, ideally. Those are the two, permethrin and DEET are the ones that we do really recommend. Those are also the ones that are recommended by the CDC. They just have the most evidence backing their effectiveness. Um, so I can't really speak on any home remedies, unfortunately, just because, there's not a ton of um, hard evidence to support them. That's not to say that there aren't any that work. It's just, unfortunately, we do have to research them a little bit more to be able to say that they really do work as effectively as the other two.
Awesome, thank you.
Yeah.
Um, And again, we talked about this a little in your presentation about like what are the best practices for limiting the number of ticks in your own property and your own yard. Besides keeping the grass cut short or limiting leaf litter. But a lot of our folks have like native gardens that they're very proud of, or like more
Mhm.
like wild yards. And I know, like, even though I live in the city, like I want to leave my leaf litter down because for fireflies that are are around
Right.
and breeding as well. So is there a happy medium there that we can like, try and protect ourselves from ticks while also trying to preserve our native gardens and more natural habitats for our native species that don't hurt us?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I have heard that about the leaf litter that I'm not a gardener myself, but I know that some people do like to leave it down. And that, that's perfectly fine. I think that, it's really important to also balance your hobbies and, how you like to keep your yard with different plants. I wish I knew more off the top of my head, but I know that there are, some species of plants that you can include in your garden to help repel the ticks. Um, I don't want to say any and be incorrect, but I know that we do have a post on our Facebook page about it. So if anyone would like to go and look, there are a lot of plants that you can include in your garden. Um, and then, keeping your garden sunny if possible. That will also help to repel the ticks. Um, but I would say, if you are a gardener and you like to include a lot of things that unfortunately will kind of attract the ticks and their hosts to your yard, just really focus on keeping yourself safe then when you are in your garden, and then perform your tick checks. It's kind of just a balance of you enjoying your yard and your space, and then keeping yourself safe as well.
Awesome. Are there any times of the day that ticks are more or less active? That would be good for us to work in our gardens or go out hiking.
They are active all the time, unfortunately. There's not really any time that's going to be safe. There are certain times of year, in the winter they will be less active, but I don't think many people are going out and gardening in the winter either. So unfortunately, no, they are just kind of out all the time.
Um, what sort of small animals like feed on ticks, and do you know of any way that we can encourage those, to hang around? Are there any like, critter tick repellent, I guess, or
Hmm.
tick predators?
That's another one that I've seen a lot recently too. I know that possums will eat ticks, as well as chickens, I believe, and maybe some other birds. But they are not going to eat them to a point where it will decrease the tick
Mm.
populations. They kind of just do it more, if they have a tick attached to them, or crawling on their fur, they'll eat it, but they're not going to actively seek out ticks, unfortunately, to the point where it would decrease their populations. So you can encourage them to hang around. It won't hurt, but it really won't do much to decrease the ticks, unfortunately.
Gotcha. So we should just encourage them to hang around because they're cute and we like them, but
Yeah.
unfortunately they're not damaging the tick population.
No,
Um,
unfortunately not.
um, yeah, and you mentioned the tick tubes in your presentation, which I didn't know
Hmm.
about before hearing you say it, but we did get questions about it on our Facebook. Do you have any insight on like, I know that you recommend them, but are these like a safe option for animals and humans, like once it's dispersed in the environment? Does it have any negative environmental consequences that we should be concerned about or use them sparingly?
Not to my knowledge. They're not going to be used to the point where there's just going to be permethrin cotton balls all over. They'll be confined to the nests of these small animals, and it doesn't harm the animals, such as the mice or the other rodents in any way. So, to my knowledge, there's no negative environmental consequences.
Awesome. Um, yeah. So one more I think about like tick behavior.
Hmm.
You touched on it a little bit in your presentation, I think, but can you like speak to like how is climate change impacting tick populations? Is there any like research directly linking like the tick increase in tick populations to climate change that you know of?
There is quite a bit of literature out there that I was actually digging into recently. Um, but it mostly affects the tick populations just because it's easier for them to survive. Um, it also has increased the populations of the deer. I know I did mention that as well, and the mice. Um, it also has affected the geographic distribution of the ticks, so they're spreading farther north, which is why, if you noticed when I was talking about the Lone Star ticks and I said that they're not found very far north, I said yet, because all of the different species have expanded. Um, and, for example, like the black-legged deer tick has expanded farther north into, northern Canadian states where they were never previously found. Um, so yeah, it mostly is just because it makes it easier for them to survive. Um, you know,
Mhm.
ticks are very hardy and they can survive in a lot of different climates. So if it doesn't get extremely cold ever and the warm season is longer, they will be around and their numbers will be increasing.
Um, there's a question that we had. Would controlled burns in areas with dense invasive plants help keep their numbers down?
That I don't know. Um, if there is any um, explicit evidence. You know, to that being an effective way to decrease the populations. I would imagine not, because ticks can hang around on any plants. They don't need invasive plant species to survive or for their habitats. So I don't think so, but I could be wrong on that. There could be some evidence. There's just not any that I know of.
Gotcha. And then a question more about like the diseases. Once recovered from Lyme's disease, can a subsequent tick bite cause additional Lyme infections, or can immunity ever develop?
No, you can be reinfected with Lyme disease, unfortunately, because in large part there are so many strains. So you can be infected with, a different strain of the bacteria, and then, you're not immune to that. So every time you get a tick bite, it is very important to get the tick tested, and to monitor yourself for symptoms, even if you've been infected with Lyme disease before or anaplasmosis before. You can definitely be reinfected with the same disease. And then because there are also so many different diseases, you can be infected with another one.
Gotcha. Um, I think that was most of our questions that we got from our members. It was folks are very interested in this topic. And I think it's something that as outdoor folks and people who love these spaces that we're all very conscious of, like I mentioned earlier. And a lot of us at our workplace, we're out all the time, and have definitely noticed these things. So
Yeah.
I think this would be a very relevant and interesting discussion for folks. But I have, one more question. Not to play devil's advocate for ticks, because I know we're all fed up with them and they do carry some pretty serious illnesses. But in your work at the tick lab, or just in your research about them, is there anything that you like find not necessarily redeeming, but maybe super interesting about them, or that something that most people might not think about when they think about these little critters that most of us or all of us consider major pests? What
Mm.
is interesting about them?
Well, they are definitely pests.
Yeah.
But I do think that their behavior is pretty interesting. So I didn't talk about this too much in this presentation, but the way that ticks find their hosts is kind of fascinating. Most species of ticks, with a few exceptions, will do what's called questing. So they will kind of hang out on a blade of grass or, some other plant, and they will just kind of wait there. And then they have these organs under their legs that allow them to sense your body heat and your carbon dioxide that you're breathing out, which is how they find their hosts. So when they detect that carbon dioxide and the body heat, then they grab onto you. Um, which is pretty fascinating. um, and then there are some species of ticks, such as the Lone Star tick, that will actively hunt out their hosts. So they're definitely more aggressive. But I guess, yeah, there's their behavior, and then their ability to survive is just amazing. It's unfortunate for us, but they can survive hundreds of days without feeding, and almost in any environment. It's just really amazing, their ability to survive. But again, it's unfortunate for us, but it is
Yeah.
interesting.
I guess, and then going off of that, one more question I had is like some other creatures that can do like serious harm to humans if you make them upset, like rattlesnakes. You don't want to get bit by one, but their venom can be very helpful in lots of medical advances. Is there anything like that with ticks, or are they just wholly just problems?
That is a really good question. I don't think there is any that, to my knowledge. There could be. Maybe there's just something that we haven't discovered yet. But, as far as science and medicine has gone so far, I don't think that we have any known, benefit from ticks or from
Gotcha.
yeah. So,
All right. Well, this has been super fascinating, a little bit scary, but mostly fascinating. But Yeah, thank you so much for coming on and talking to folks about this very important topic.
Yeah, thank you for having me. And then, if anyone has any additional questions, feel free to reach out to us. Our Facebook and our Instagram is there. You can go on our website as well. You can also give us a call. Our phone number is on the website, and we would be happy to talk to you and answer any of your questions.